My name is Sophie Lambert. I'm the Director of Everyday Banking and Payments at Tangerine, and I'll be moderating. Just before we get started, a few housekeeping items. So if you want to ask a question, please click on Ask the Speaker in the top right. You can also upvote your favorite question. We'll be taking questions at the end of the panel discussion, so not to worry, we'll get to it when we wrap. If you want to text chat with your fellow attendees, you can click on Join the Conversation, which is the tile box just under Ask the Speaker. And during the session, just for your awareness, your mic and your video will be disabled. Okay, so jumping in, I think we can all agree that we're seeing the loyalty landscape continue to evolve and become increasingly more competitive. Customers are demanding increased flexibility in ways to earn and redeem points, and partnerships are key to proprietary program success and deepening customer relationships. With payments undergoing massive transformation accelerated by the global pandemic, I'm excited to be exploring the future of loyalty with our esteemed panel. I'm now going to pass it over to each of our panelists to introduce themselves, and we'll start with Jennifer LaForge.
Thank you, Sophie. Good morning, everyone. I'm Jen LaForge. I'm the General Manager of Rakuten Rewards Canada. We are Canada's biggest and best online cashback shopping platform, and we provide cashback on all your online purchases and in-store from over 750 retailers in Canada. Happy to be here.
Okay, over to Amisha.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Amisha Parikh. I'm the Vice President of Product Management, Loyalty and Engagement for Mastercard in Canada. I'm responsible for overseeing our product suite as well as customer success and growth and innovation as we bring loyalty to our issuing and merchant partners. Very happy to be on this panel today.
Thanks, Amisha. And Bhavna.
Thank you, Sophie, and good morning, all. Bhavna Kaushal. I'm Vice President for Payments and Loyalty and Unsecured Lending with Scotiabank in our international portfolio. So as part of my role, I manage all of our markets south of the US, and that's primarily Latin America and the Caribbean. Really looking forward to the discussion today.
All right. And Ricardo.
Well, good morning, everyone. And first of all, thank you for the invitation. My name is Ricardo Tafur. I'm the Vice President of Consumer Products, Data, and Loyalty for the Latin America and the Caribbean region. And our focus is really on consumer value delivery, primarily through data-centric and digital journeys. Thank you once again for having me.
Thank you. Excellent. Okay, so let's jump right into the discussion. And perhaps, Jennifer, we'll start with you. So e-commerce has grown significantly over the past few years. What are some of the major trends and disruptors that you're seeing in the loyalty market today?
Yeah, absolutely. We all saw this mass adoption in the digital space over the pandemic. And what that brought to light was a lot of the cracks that we had, spending a lot of time trying to fulfill on that massive surge and huge challenges with supply chains and distribution. And what all that really brought was this massive shift in brand loyalty. There was market share shifting. There was adoptions of new services that were being picked up by consumers as they really enjoyed the freedom that digital and online commerce had brought to them. So traditionally, there were loyalty programs that really enabled brands to increase their member value and retention, but that really became moot as people were trying to find products at different brands in different locations. And now it's evolved into more of this effective tool to be gaining new customers as well. And so that shift has really pivoted. And I think what it also brought to light was that there's many different demographics at play. So if you look at from Gen Y to Boomers, they're all looking at their digital interactions differently. And they're all living in very different economic situations, whether it's paycheck to paycheck or they don't have credit cards. And so the focus on that customer experience has also shifted, where payments were always considered that final step. And it was product discovery, it was reviews, it was shipping. Now, payments has moved to the forefront of that entire experience, and consumers are thinking about how they're going to pay and the options and the ease of it at the beginning of that journey. So a lot of shifts have happened, and I think a lot of brands were focused on increasing payments and making improvements there and adding to their loyalty. but it's just accelerated now. And I think we have to move a lot faster to really respond to those consumer expectations.
Yeah, for sure. And Bhavna, how about you? You have an international lens on loyalty. What are some of the key considerations that are top of mind for you? And can you also speak a bit about the impact of the pandemic on this?
Absolutely. I think we've heard this all through the last 2 days of the summit, and then of course, as Jennifer said right now as well, we keep hearing digital. And what I'm seeing internationally in a lot of markets outside of Canada, where we were not perhaps at the same level, be it e-commerce, be it streaming, be it online entertainment, we're there now. And that's something that is obviously going to continue, and that's big. But the second piece, and again to build on what Jennifer said, is customization. And that's going to be even more important, not just because of the pandemic, but because coming out of the pandemic, we're going to have customers, who will, for example, return to travel as borders open up, as people starved of, any kind of international travel want to go out. But at the same time, there's going to be a core group of consumers who are going to stick closer to home, who are going to uh, do things online more than usual. And customization is going to be about one, knowing which customer you want to provide what service to, but two, having the right partnerships, both at a local level, because you need to be hyper local, and then global. And I think that has really been underscored by the pandemic, is that we are going to have these parallel paths moving forward. There's going to be higher customization, and there is going to be all the more need for partnerships and building the ecosystems.
Yeah, makes sense. And if we turn now, to loyalty's role in the future of digital payments, Ricardo, from your perspective, leading loyalty programs in multiple markets, how have you seen loyalty evolve with the shift to increasingly digital and alternative payment methods?
Yeah, I think that what really has become the catalyst for change is the consumer, right? So if we put the consumer at the center, we have to balance both the earn and the burn side of the house. So in the future, what we'll really see is an integration or more of a universal appeal in regards to the currency of loyalty. That currency as well in where I can burn it. So more outlets to use that currency and drastically bringing together what we call an integration or orchestration of various loyalty programs coming. The big shift is really going to be at a consumer-centric approach versus the traditional verticals that we follow on the loyalty. Last but not least, we all know that loyalty and rewards is looking at the same changing behavior, right? So I offer you X, so you will do Y. That is really when it's going to be the biggest integration is commonalities across what is the change of behavior that we may see coming into the future. Orchestration is really what I see in the future coming together. And as last but not least, really the diversity of those programs coming into one single value.
Yeah, makes sense. And Amisha, interested in your thoughts, especially as it relates to sort of alternative payment currencies and crypto, and how that relates to loyalty.
Absolutely. Drawing upon what Jennifer and Bhavna said at the beginning, I mean, over the past 2 years, we've seen an unparalleled level of digital adoption across all aspects of people's lives. I think everyone has had their own experience about life changing over the last few years, and it's accelerated this need for consumer solutions that are, touchless, convenient, digital first. And as we see this kind of move towards building digital infrastructure, it's also putting into focus the digital tools that individuals now have to be in control of their financial service experience. For loyalty programs, that this has increased the demand for highly personalized approach based in choice, flexibility, convenience. We continue to see momentum with this concept of alternative payment currencies and the role that loyalty plays within this ecosystem. The increased liquidity of rewards currencies across programs has really allowed consumers to have a ubiquity to use their points with this increased flexibility. But it's paired with the importance of acceptance of loyalty currencies at merchant checkout, and a really important piece of the equation. And we know that there are many technologies out there that enable, payment with points, linked to payment cards, associated with rewards programs, to really unlock this value for merchants in the ecosystem, but also putting consumers in control of how they're rewarded.
Absolutely. And Jennifer, regarding loyalty models and ecosystems, where do you see untapped opportunities for innovation and loyalty, across the end-to-end customer journey?
Yeah, I think in Canada, because we are relatively behind some of the other markets, there's untapped potential, I think, in a lot of the partnerships and the coalition loyalty programs, the ability to pool data and to align value propositions with those that have similar targets and similar segments. I think there's a huge opportunity in being able to create the scale and the speed to maximize that end-to-end experience by collaborating and working together. And I think it's really important that we do that in order to create less currencies on what those loyalty points are. I think it's very confusing for consumers to have 14, 15 different loyalty programs. And I think it washes out the value of overall loyalty. So I think as we tie in the loyalty experience with payments and create those really robust ecosystems, it's going to provide that end-to-end customer experience where they do feel they have the flexibility, they have the customization and that bespoke experience that's taught directly to who they are and where they want to shop. And I think it also creates a new level of security and privacy as well, because you are within an entire ecosystem of that brand relationship or partnership as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And if we shift now to emerging payment trends like real-time rails, non-card, APM, maybe I'll start with you, Bhavna. What do you think these trends mean to loyalty? And can you speak a bit about the economics of loyalty? And Bhavna, I think you're just on mute.
Thank you, Sophie. So I was going to say absolutely, and interestingly, that would be the first thing that I would talk about, would be the economics of loyalty. So for ourselves in international banking at Scotiabank, the loyalty model is very clear. It's cross-product and it's customer-centric, just because you cannot simply work with one particular product, even though for the longest time, loyalty has had a relationship with payments. But one of the things I think both Jennifer brought up and Amisha brought up is flexibility. What I would add to that is ubiquity. So are we going to see payments move? Absolutely. It's going to move more towards A2A, towards open banking, towards APIs. A lot of things are going to happen. How we associate loyalty with that is really going to be based on adoption, on consumer choice, and getting to that point where we actually are servicing the majority of our customers. So I do see a change happening. I see it happening broader than just payments in terms of the types of payments. And then it becomes a question of market adoption, where the economics work for loyalty, but also work for the customer in this cross-product, cross-payment scenario. And I see, that's going to be the pivotal point that's going to help make that shift.
Yeah, absolutely. And Amisha, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think as we see new forms of how buyers and sellers transact within this ecosystem, as Bhavna mentioned, it provides a new construct within which loyalty can be built. Loyalty itself is more than just rewards programs, right? It's about true lifecycle engagement across the customer's journey, and really focuses on the importance of the customer experience and putting the customer at the heart of building that loyalty strategy. And although the interaction points change as the marketplace changes, the fundamental principles remain the same. For loyalty programs to succeed within this new paradigm, programs need to implement a higher degree of personalization throughout the entire life cycle, from acquisition and onboarding to retention and usage. And as we look at these emerging trends in the payment space, there's this need to actively be looking for ways to incorporate it. And that's varied from using a rewards currency to redeem for crypto, or increased engagement through highly personal, contextually appropriate offers. I think the key here really, as we look at this, to adapting these changes, will be incorporating these new assets or ways of interaction into a loyalty strategy in a way that's easy to understand, easy to adopt, easy to use. And ultimately, consumers are looking for simplicity, but they're looking for it while simultaneously meeting their expectations of safety, security, and trust.
Yeah, absolutely. And Jennifer, as the payments ecosystem continues to evolve, what do you see as next for loyalty and rewards programs? And what does it mean, especially as we think about the freelance economy?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's so many shifts for the pandemic, and it's opened a lot of our eyes. And I think that there's a direct correlation in loyalty, not just with the consumers and the brand, but also behind the scenes and how the brands are operating their loyalty programs, especially as the freelance economy continues to explode and the expectations on that side are increasing as well. So there's the speed of payment, the frequency of payment. There's a lot of antiquated processes or older systems that just aren't able to kind of keep up with the speed of demand and acceleration that we're seeing. And so that pivot and that shift on both sides of the business, I think, are going to have a really interesting play in how they serve, those that are receiving payments and those that are making the payments. And I think it's really fun that interplay is happening, because it really is leading us all towards what the younger demographic and that experience is looking like as well. And so, buy now, pay later, for an example, is something that I've been really interested in Canada is a huge opportunity to really be helping, those economic situations that we're seeing where you do have shorter freelance payments coming in, you have less economic uncertainty, we're already primed with subscriptions and monthly payments, and so being able to have faster real-time payments, being able to make payments in installments, it really fits in, I think, with the way that life is shifting to overall on both sides.
Yeah, that's a great point. And Ricardo, maybe over to you. So Canada's announced an open banking lead, who was a keynote earlier in the summit. Where do you see potential with open banking and loyalty?
Well, we have seen actually the when we talk about trends, it's really realities. And I take something that Amisha and Jennifer also mentioned. You have buyers and sellers coming together. So open banking really becomes that organic growth of orchestration and interaction between buyers and sellers. It always goes down to consumer choice, and it also, of course, on the seller side are offering, as Jennifer knows well, on the Rakuten side of the offering. But really, when we look at that, we have an epicenter, and it's going to be really the data safety and security coming about. Something that open banking really brings when we start sharing, right? Consumer information, sellers information is really going to be emphasizing the data, the security, and the transparency for all participants within what will become the new trend or the new way for loyalty. Last but not least, what would really have to come, and Amisha mentioned it well, is when we look at the life cycle management, we have seen compressions of such, right? So traditionally, we were looking at acquisition, activation, usage, retention, or actually really moving towards reducing abandonment rates on the seller side. Now we're seeing this really a good compression where it becomes more valuable in both the quantity and the quality. But nowadays, it's really when it's going to happen on the trust side of the equation of how really can I earn and can I burn those offerings coming together. Open banking is just really the natural stage. We in LAC have seen a great emergence of RTPs, Brazil, one of them with PIX, Argentina with transferences 3.0. We also see in Costa Rica. So reality comes about, and they're not really emergent. It's just the progression of how do we actually bring to a digital community many of the consumers and sellers that were not participants. So we coined a term back a couple of years ago when we had the discussion, was really digital inclusion. So
Hmm.
those new payment methods, we will also talk about digital inclusion. We also have to talk about loyalty inclusion. What resonates to the traditional target markets, which were high ticket and high spenders, now needs to resonate to those low value, high frequency type of consumers and sellers that we see about. So that's really what we all be working towards very, very soon.
And I would love to, Sophie, just add to what Ricardo said, because I think there's some really good points there about, as we think about in the Canadian marketplace, open banking further accelerating competition in this marketplace. New digital players are adding another dimension now which traditional banking players need to contend with, right, in our marketplace as consumers become more open to having these types of banking relationships with a variety of different players. But I think paired with that, open banking opens up the ability for access to transaction data to create new loyalty constructs. And so there is truly a benefit for the consumer as we look at it in the paired with offering it in a way that's safe, secure, and that you're building those trust with consumers. We've already in the Canadian landscape started to see this coming up with offers programs being built upon this open banking type framework, right? And it's creating this new competitive landscape landscape in terms of how we can provide loyalty solutions in Canada.
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe what we'll do now is just do kind of a quick 30-second roundtable. I mean, I think hearing from all of you, I think arguably this is a time where you see the most confluence of different factors. If you think about the pandemic, you think about open banking, which we just talked about, personalization, customization, orchestration, partnerships, the move to digital, constantly evolving consumer behaviors. So there's just so much impacting the space. And would love to hear, each of your thoughts on, what you see as the future of payments and loyalty. And maybe we'll start, Ricardo, with you, and then we'll go round table.
I think then we all agree that this is the best time to be in payments and loyalty. Second part, it is just really the nature of the business. So when we feel like there's really pulling dynamics and really inclusive dynamics, so we have to really embrace those. Data really becomes at the center, and this is one of the levels that we really put to the side. I mean, we all hear about consumer information. Really, what data allows us to do is to really quantify and size and deliver. We will many of us have heard the term and use it quite often. What is the next best offer? So how does it really becomes contextual to Amisha versus what Bhavna might see, right? And primarily to stay in tune with the continuous change of preference and behavior. One of the data that we were pulling together really looks at the swing that we did. Consumer spending not decreased during the pandemic, but really just shifted. Now the question is, where is it going to be moving next? It's really going to be in the middle of what we're going to prioritize. We actually are already at 2019 pre-COVID levels on international travel and expand, right? So did it really reduce the amount that we used to spend? No, it's now shifting. What we used to do in subscriptions, as Jennifer well said, which is one of the key driving forces for many of the seller side of the house. And last but not least, when we start talking about the data, is how do we monetize the data in pro of our strategic prerogatives, right? We will always focus on the delivery, but we have never focused really on the concussion of the strategy when it comes to loyalty. That's where we're going to be seeing all the emergence of all the different forces that are coming together.
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe Jennifer, over to you.
Sure. So many thoughts to try and narrow down. I think on the loyalty side itself in the future, we're going to see just incredible innovation like we've never seen before. I think there's the very tired, stale type of construct around what a loyalty program is. And I think Amisha touched on this as well. I think we're going to be coming out with incredible ways to create loyalty end to end in that experience that's really speaking to that bespoke experience, which again leans on the consumer side, and where we're going to see that there's huge empowerment coming from consumers in shopping how they want to shop and when they want to shop, and how they're interacting and how they're paying and how they're controlling their own finances and their own credit and how they're building that. And so I think that's going to again lean right into that data and personalization, which I'm heavily focused on the privacy side, because you can have all the data, you can use all of the data, but if you're not keeping it secure and if you don't have that trust, you're going to lose that very loyal customer and everything falls apart from there. So I do see increasing pressures on the privacy and the compliance side, and with partnerships growing and pooling of data, we're also going to see a shift in accountability and really determining who is accountable to keeping that safe and protecting and sharing that. So there's a lot going on in the future, I think, and it's today really. So
yeah, absolutely. Amisha.
Yeah, I think the future, some really good points already. And I think the future will be increasingly centered on the ability to deliver products, services, and rewards that consumers desire through online channels and platforms that they prefer. I think it's fair to say that customer experience is loyalty's new currency. And in the Canadian landscape, loyalty is being reshaped by several trends that have been underway for some time, but have really come to the forefront in kind of recent months and years. In addition to the digital transformation, which I know we've discussed, and the increased importance on safety and safety signals. There's also this focus on driving local connections, responsibility to one's own community, increasing consumer desire for things like convenience, and creating purpose-oriented benefits with a focus on cultivating next generation loyalty. And what I mean by that is a focus, we've got this lens of ESG, we've got this, reframing responsibility, community involvement, being able to talk about increasing inclusivity, talking about planning for diversity. All of these things come into the framework of how we construct kind of loyalty for the future. And as we kind of look at remaining competitive in what's already a pretty, a pretty exciting and one could argue crowded marketplace, there's this need to consider key strategies for winning customer loyalty, really around a lot of things we've touched upon today: delivering digital first experiences, engaging consumers through personalization, and building trust through best-in-class privacy and security.
Yeah, absolutely. Bhavna, anything to add to all of this?
My colleagues have covered so many great points here. I will try to summarize a couple of points that I was thinking about, elements of which have already been touched upon. So we already know, and those of us in the loyalty space have long been saying loyalty is not rewards. We also know, as we're talking now, loyalty is moving towards experiences. As Amisha just pointed out, experiences now go beyond that amazing travel trip that you can have, to looking at what's relevant to you personally. Is it social? Is it community? And how do you go? And I think what we need to do, those of us in the field of loyalty, is actually make sure that we are able to provide all of this. And the reason for that is that you need to be able to touch your customer every day in their day-to-day life, aspirationally as to where they want to be, as well as in terms of the social element, or the social conscious element. And I think if you're able to find that right mix, that's going to be critical. Also, which is fundamental, one organization is not going to be able to deliver all of these. Partnerships are going to be critical and they're going to be key. And having those ecosystems interconnected, as I mentioned before, locally and globally, is going to be very, very key. And the final piece is obviously loyalty well beyond transactions. It has to be about the customer experience. It has to be about all of the customer touch points. And I think those are the areas that are going to really see the changes from a customer perspective for loyalty.
Yeah, that's great. And maybe I'll move over to our questions now. And thank you to those of you who have submitted questions. We do have about 15 more minutes to take questions. So please feel free to continue to add to the Ask the Speaker tile. So maybe the first one up here is from Stephen Yan. And it sort of relates to what you were saying, Bhavna, around, one loyalty kind of approach is maybe not going to be all things to all people. So, given that, you can almost think of points as a form of digital currency. And is there the future possibility of consumers being able to sell or buy a type of currency for another, and for merchants to accept loyalty reward points? So maybe what I'll do is sort of Ricardo and Amisha, if you have a perspective on this that you'd like to share, maybe starting with Ricardo.
Of course, and I think that is really what is at the center, is that universality that we spoke about on the second question, what is the role in the future, is really that conversion rate. Let's keep in mind that where the loyalty points sit today is on the cost side of the house. It's a liability. So it really is it has to be burned. It has to be utilized. It has to have a value. So when we talked about what the future brings or what the near future brings is that universality. What we know today is that cash back in some forms provides the universal blanket. I get cash, I can use somewhere else. There's also the fact that I can translate that cash into other kind of digital means, right? I can tokenize it, put it in a wallet, and voila, I gave you access to universal redemptions at any merchant location. That that is not what we should be focusing on solving for, because you can take the currency and fiat it, right? Canadian dollars, Brazilian reais, but reality is how they interoperate, how the points from program A and program B will translate into a marketplace. Very simple in very mundane terms. How can I turn my frequent flyer miles into another currency that will entice me more, right? Even within the TNE, can I turn flying miles into hotel estates? Can I turn that into another? So this is what is really going to come together, and the panel was really discussing is that interoperability and that capacity to become more universal. So it is really when it's going to end. Last but not least, we're even testing programs in various markets in LAC, primarily in Argentina, where you use crypto as the currency now for loyalty, right? So don't give me cash back, don't give me points, give me crypto. Last but not least, I think that we all can um, agree is then the visibility that I as a consumer have on the value and the point creates the most traction. So if I know that a point equals 1 cent, which is what traditionally we know, then I know exactly what I can do with that tender, right? So those two components I will bring about the capacity to interconnect and orchestrate between the loyalty programs, and the second one, the consumer visibility to the value of those points and the capacity to bond more universally.
Yeah, makes sense. And Amisha, anything that you want to add to that?
Yeah, I would say it's a very fair statement that loyalty points are a digital currency, right? They absolutely exist as such. And I think when we talk about, the possibility of consumers being able to convert currencies, and as Ricardo just touched on, I mean, this concept of points exchange already exists in the marketplace today. And the ability to take a points currency at kind of a fixed value per point, and then be able to convert it to points value of choice. I think as we think about how this is evolving in the marketplace, and I know Bhavna touched upon ubiquity of the currency itself. And I think that ubiquity and broadening of the utility of a points currency from legacy, what we thought about rewards or points currency was really, I go through a catalog, I order a toaster, I go on a website, I'll pick, save up for that aspirational reward of taking my family to Disney. I mean, obviously speaking from my personal experiences, but these are right. Those are kind of the types of rewards that we would think about, and how that has evolved is really now talking about some of what was highlighted in Stephen's question around, looking at this as saying, this is now a currency. It is an alternative payment currency. It needs to live in an ecosystem with other alternative payment currencies. Ricardo touched upon crypto. That's an option in terms of redeeming for another currency, right? Within your ecosystem, and making that choice and creating that flexibility for the consumer. And then the ability for merchants to accept. I mean, I think this is very much here and now. I think this idea, I know at Mastercard, we have, capabilities like pay with rewards, and we talk about points at checkout. I mean, the intention of these capabilities is to allow, merchants to be able to unlock this type of value without needing to invest behind building up their own infrastructure. So to Bhavna's point around partnerships, there are players in the marketplace who can help to unlock these capabilities and create ease in terms of the transition to, whether it's e-commerce, whether it's brick and mortar point of sale, being able to say, what, I accept all currencies in the marketplace. And that really is a huge value proposition as we think about all players in the ecosystem.
Absolutely. Okay, I'm going to go to an upvoted question. So what is the panel's view on the use of prepaid cards as it relates to loyalty? And so Ricardo and Amisha, I would naturally go to you with this question, but I'm wondering, Bhavna, if you have a perspective, from the Scotia side of things on prepaid cards and sort of the opportunity there in the loyalty space.
So let me start by divvying up prepaid cards. You have the closed loop prepaid cards related to a particular merchant or a particular entity. And then you have the open loop prepaid cards, such as, the Visa prepaid card, the Mastercard prepaid card. From a consumer perspective, when you look at it, the more flexible a card, the better it is, which is great, which automatically will lead us to our open loop prepaid cards. At the same time, from a loyalty provider's perspective, obviously you also have to work through the economics. And often the margins for the individual merchant and the card that they're providing are easier to manage in terms of how you work through the program. So what is the view on the use of prepaid cards? I think absolutely any type of a card gives the customer a fair amount of flexibility. And which card and how you use it will really depend on your program and your program economics, and obviously what your customer values. If somebody really prefers, let's say, a big electronic brand, they're big Apple consumers, that might be where they want to go. Somebody else just wants the complete flexibility and they want to go the open loop route. So yes, the option exists. It gives the customers, more ubiquity in terms of currency. And obviously that's part of the reason you see even today that these cards are widespread in loyalty portfolios across. And I see that usage continuing to grow, in fact, just simply because it gives more flexibility to the customer.
Makes sense. I see you nodding a lot, Jennifer. I don't know if on the Rakuten side you've got thoughts on this that you wanted to share.
Yeah, I love Bhavna's perspective, and mine was on the other side. In total agreement there in terms of there's certainly a place for this, and there's the economics at play, and I'm thinking more about the economics on the merchant side. And so, taking Rakuten for an example, we have a gift card shop, and so gift cards in itself is like a prepaid card. And so you can look at that as, the individual who's giving it or purchasing it is stacking a reward that they're getting for the card that is then taken to the merchant and then stacking on those rewards. The merchant is considering those economics, but what it also leads to is traditionally you've gotten a prepaid amount and there's going to be a breakage percentage to be considered on that, or there's going to be, a larger purchase made. So I'm coming with a $100 prepaid card, but now I'm spending $150, and I might not have ever went there if I didn't have that prepaid card for that specific merchant. And so I think the economics become very tricky because on one side you're trying to balance those margins, you're trying to balance the stacking of those different types of rewards and currencies, but then you have to look at how it's generating those new customers, how it's increasing the cart size, how it's going to drive the loyalty on that side of entering into the brand and the marketplace. So I think, it's such an intricate, conversation with so many different avenues. But really it all comes down to understanding, as Bhavna had said, the economy of it, the economics
absolutely. Okay, another upvoted question from Stefan Witan. So loyalty has largely been consumer focused. Do you think there is a B2B play, such as with trade suppliers, etc.? So maybe I'm not sure who wants to take this one. Who's interested in the B2B? And let's go for it, Ricardo.
It's interesting because when I read it, it's literally that's one of the biggest challenges. We try to transpose our knowledge on what has worked, our playbooks from the consumer to business environment. Reality is that most of the innovation is really happening on the seller side and how sellers are interacting. So we look at the verticals because when we talk about business to business, we just can't think about just consumers as we are use socioeconomical income or spend levels. It really goes into the vertical. So in the agro, for example, I'm speaking of Latin America, that vertical has very dynamic loyalty programs where we know that farmers are buying lots of products, machinery. So how do you really create the value? It's not going to be the point earned and the points burned. It's going to be coming about the extended warranties that come with the machinery, the actual visit of a specialist. So you start creating those loyalty programs on the same basis of I want to change behavior by creating preference by seller one to seller two, and then exchanging it. The other vertical that we see is on transport. There's in the B2B is really coming into the trucking industry, comes into the mass transit industry. There's great consumption coming about within that ecosystem. So how do you build that? Uh, Primarily, what we all center around when we talk about loyalty is what is the currency that will change behavior? So that will be the question that we'll put for the B2B and how you shift those. I think that one of the biggest shifts we just saw to recently was Amazon with the extension of their click button to be able to bring the logistic, the delivery part with the ecosystem outside on sellers' websites. So that's what really creates the loyalty. We go back, and for those who are passionate about user experience is really the new loyalty. Now, when we move into the value exchange, it's part of the user experience. Yeah.
Absolutely. Sounds good. Okay, so I think we've got about two more questions that we can take. So one is, how should we think about loyalty economics in the world of no-fee products and reducing interchange environments? Would like to take
I could give it a try.
this?
I think the first thing you should think about in terms of loyalty economics is your lifetime customer value. I know very typically we look at loyalty, and even Ricardo mentioned this earlier, as a liability, the expense. And typically, we've also looked at loyalty as being a credit card expense because of the interchange that comes from there. Now, if we turn things around on its head, though, and we're really thinking lifetime customer value, then why are we not looking at it as contra revenue? So when I think loyalty long term, and I think same concept, which we're putting across our international banking markets, the cross product, the customer centric, you cannot rely on only one piece or one product. With that said, I still fully expect that cards are going to remain the base, the primary piece on which we base our loyalty programs, simply because of all of our different payment products or even banking products. Those are the ones where we have the most touch points with our customers, right? And while we have a number of different new forms of payments coming forward, there will be a time that there is ubiquity. But we don't need to wait that long. We can start right now if we start thinking cross products. So we think customer lifetime value, and we start thinking of this not just as an expense, but what it is we're generating. We have to rebuild our financial models, and I think that's what's going to be critical in terms of moving forward with loyalty.
Yeah, I just to add to Bhavna what you said, I love how you positioned it as really being, it's traditionally how we've looked at this as being a cost center, but it is so integrated. And I think as you called it, right, like life cycle value, customer life cycle value, how important that concept is. I think as I would kind of draw on that thread and also say, I absolutely agree. We've looked at loyalty as its own vertical. It is so integrated in driving in great engagement across the entire life cycle. And this concept, as we broaden out looking at, and I think, Bhavna, as you talked about it being like a cards, loyalty is a cards proposition. I think this concept of relationship rewards and building a relationship more broadly with the bank is really important. We call it like whole bank loyalty, right? And I think this concept of whole bank loyalty is something that I would say is evolving and becoming more and more important, right? Because it's about driving loyalty and stickiness across all aspects of interaction and growing that relationship with the customer beyond just sign up for a credit card and get an acquisition bonus and earn some rewards, but really you're building this relationship, building trust, and creating this overall kind of whole bank loyalty. And I think that concept moves the economic view of being about rewards currency liability and takes it to a level, and as Bhavna mentioned, about that customer lifecycle value and just broadening that relationship overall with your financial institution.
If I may, let's also think about loyalty on the next generation of experiences. So we talk about buy now, pay later. Is that a solution to bring more loyalty? We had buy now, pay later in Latin America for over 3 decades in different levels. You have the seller, you have the buyer, you have issuers and acquirers working together. But really becomes a loyalty solution where I'm able to create more frequency, more stickiness, and most of all, more preference. So I will talk to others. So it is also part as productiers, as loyaltiers than we are, to think about do I continue to play the earn and burn, or do I move into the functionality of the solution to become that loyalty side? That's when in my previous comment I said UX is the new loyalty. Why do we gravitate towards the share economy? Because it provides visibility and value, hence I'll go. So buy now, pay later becomes one of those levels. And to Bhavna's point is, how do we actually integrate more products around that client, being seller or being buyer, that allows for the loyalty to continue to evolve as a lifetime value?
Yeah, absolutely. And I just want to say thank you to everyone, to our panelists, our audience, for such an engaging discussion. Thank you for the questions. I've certainly learned so much about the loyalty landscape today and what the future holds. I hope everyone enjoys their remaining sessions today. Thank you so much and goodbye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Thank you.